My name is Thomas Miller, and for 30 years I have lived with blood on my hands. I am a butcher in a slaughterhouse just outside of Des Moines, Iowa, and the stench of death has followed me like a shadow all my life. When you do this work long enough, you stop hearing the squeals, you stop smelling the iron in the air, you stop seeing the eyes. That is what I used to believe now. I know the eyes never stopped watching. The first thing you notice in a slaughterhouse is the sound, a constant shriek that rattles in your skull like nails dragged across glass. But 2 months ago, the sound changed. I was driving a line of pigs into the pens when everything went silent at once. Not one squeal, not one shuffle. Hundreds of animals, pressed together, breathing in unison. And then they lifted their heads, every single one, their black eyes finding me in the fluorescent light dot. It felt like falling into a pit. Their gaze was not that of animals. It was recognition. The silence broke with a sound I still cannot explain. It was not a squeal, not a grunt. It was something deeper, stretched like a voice rising from the bottom of a well. My stick slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. I should have run, but I could not. They were not just looking at me. They were studying me. Since then, it has not stopped. Every morning I enter the slaughterhouse and feel their eyes before I see them. Sometimes they stand perfectly still in their pens, as if frozen in place, waiting. Sometimes they slam their bodies against the bars, not in panic but in rhythm, a pounding that echoes like a heartbeat. I have seen teeth grinding against metal until blood dripped from their gums. Yet their stares never moved from me. The dreams are worse. I wake in the dark with my sheets soaked, the sound of hooves scratching against tile in my ears. In the dream I stand knee-deep in blood that stretches farther than I can see. The pigs are there, pressed against the bars, but their eyes glow white, and their mouths open far too wide. The sound they make is language, but twisted. Words that scrape the inside of my skull until I wake gasping. I have not told Margaret. How could I explain that I hear whispers when I am alone in the plant? Whispers that rise from the shadows of the pens. Whispers that grow louder when I sharpen my knives. Last Friday I thought I had lost my mind completely. The pigs erupted into chaos, slamming, shrieking, gnashing. I stormed into the holding area ready to beat them back into order, but the second I appeared the noise died. Dead silence. They turned toward me in one perfect motion. The air was heavy and wet, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Then, one pig stepped forward. Its body twitched with a rhythm too deliberate to be natural. Its jaw sagged open, and from its throat came a sound like a human voice dragged through a rusted pipe. It was not a word, but I felt it strike my chest all the same. The others pressed closer to the gate, eyes shining in the cold light, and I knew they wanted me closer. I ran. I left the slaughterhouse door hanging wide, my boots slipping through trails of blood that seemed to spread where I stepped. The next day was worse. During slaughter, I hoisted one up, the blade steady in my hand. I struck clean, the way I had done thousands of times before. But the pig's eyes did not dim. They widened. Its legs jerked violently, not in reflex, but in intent, like it was trying to lunge for me. Blood sprayed hot across my face, but the eyes stayed clear, locked on mine. The others shrieked in their pens, their bodies crashing against the gates so violently the metal bent. My knife slipped from my hand. Another worker shoved me aside to finish the job, shouting at me, but I barely heard him. I could feel something in those eyes, not fear, not pain, a promise. That night, the dream returned, clearer than ever. I was standing in the slaughterhouse alone. The fluorescent lights flickered, the pipes dripped, but the pigs were gone. Instead, the pens were filled with shapes that wore their skins wrong, their bodies swollen and stretched, their jaws splitting too wide as words poured from their mouths in a language that made my bones ache. I tried to cover my ears, but the sound crawled inside me, and when I looked down the pool of blood, stretched so far, it reflected the ceiling lights like a mirror. and in that reflection, the pigs were smiling. I woke screaming, clawing at my arms as though something were under my skin. When I entered the slaughterhouse this morning, the silence hit me harder than any scream could. They were waiting, not moving, not squealing, waiting. I tried not to look, but I did. And I swear by every drop of blood I have spilled in 30 years, what I saw froze me to the core. They smiled at me, rows of crooked, human teeth glistening wet in the fluorescent light, and I knew this is only the beginning. I did not sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt them watching. Not in the dream, in the dark of my own bedroom. The sheets smelled faintly of iron, though Margaret said she could not smell anything. I kept hearing the soft scrape of hooves against the wooden floorboards of the hallway. But when I sat up, the house was silent. When dawn came, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my coffee, as if it might save me. Margaret tried to speak, but her voice felt far away, muffled as though I was underwater. I could only think of the pigs, of their teeth. I did not want to go back, but I had no choice. The slaughterhouse was all I had ever known. The moment I pushed open the steel doors, the air hit me like rot. The stench was not the usual iron and waste. It was thicker, sweet, and cloying. The smell of meat left too long in the summer heat. My boots slipped slightly on the concrete, and when I looked down, I saw the stains on the floor had spread wider, darker than the night before. The pens were quiet. That silence was worse than any sound. I forced myself to begin my work. Knife in hand, I moved toward the prep area, but the moment I touched the sharpening stone, a noise slithered from behind me. A low rasp, guttural like breath, pressed through a broken throat. I turned. The pigs were lined against the bars, pressed so tightly their bodies seemed to merge together, their eyes shining black in the cold light. One of them tilted its head back, jaw sagging open. The noise rose again, clearer this time, not human, not animal, something in between. The words did not belong to any language I knew, yet they curved through the air with intent. My skin prickled as if the sound itself were crawling across me. I stumbled back, the knife clattering against the floor. The others followed. They pressed their faces against the bars, teeth scraping metal, and in unison, they began to chew. I swear, I saw fragments of steel snap loose under their bite. Blood spilled from their gums, but they did not stop. Their gaze burned into me. A hunger I could not understand. I left the room, shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my keys. In the locker room, I splashed water on my face, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My eyes looked hollow, the skin around them dark and bruised. For a moment, the reflection twitched. My mouth opened wider than it should have, and a row of teeth glistened too sharp. Too many. I blinked, and the reflection was normal again. I told myself I was hallucinating, that exhaustion was tearing holes in my mind. But when I stepped back into the hall, I saw something that made me doubt my own denial. The trail of blood on the floor. It stretched from the pens to the far wall, a thick line that pulsed faintly as though it was still flowing. I followed it despite every instinct, screaming to turn back. The trail ended at a door I had never seen before. That was impossible. I knew every inch of this place. 30 years I had walked these halls, memorized every doorway, every pipe, but there it was. A door, rusted, half sunken into the wall, the handle slick with fresh blood. My hand shook as I reached for it. The metal was warm. Behind the door came a sound, slow, wet, like hooves dragging through thick mud. And then, layered above it, the squeal of a pig stretched into a scream too high, too human. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The trail of blood thickened at my feet, spreading outward, as if trying to reach me. The lights above flickered, violently, and in that stuttering glow, I saw shapes move behind the pens. Not pigs, taller, leaner. Their faces sagged like masks, their jaws splitting open into crooked smiles. The light snapped out, total black. The sound came again, right behind me. I ran. I do not remember how I found the exit, only that I burst into the daylight, gasping, my body drenched in cold sweat, my hands still shaking. I drove home without a word. Margaret asked why I came back early, but I could not answer. I shut myself in the bathroom, clutching the sink, staring into the mirror. And that is when I saw it. For the briefest second. My eyes were not my own. They were black, glossy, pig eyes. And when I blinked, my reflection smiled. The next morning I told myself I would not go back. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at the steam that had long since vanished. Margaret asked if I was ill. I could not answer. My tongue felt heavy, thick, like it did not belong to me. But by noon, my car was already pulling into the slaughterhouse lot. My body moved without thought, as if something wanted me there. The air hit me harder than before, thick with rot, clinging sweet like spoiled fruit. I gagged into my sleeve but stepped inside anyway. The fluorescent lights flickered, humming, louder than I remembered. The building felt alive, each rattle of the pipes like lungs filling, each drip of water like saliva. The pens were not where they should have been. I stopped cold. I knew this place like the back of my hand. For 3 decades the pens lined the east wall, row after row. Now they stretched across the center of the room, forming a circle. Inside the circle was nothing but darkness, a pit where the floor should have been. The pigs pressed against the bars, bodies heaving as one. Their eyes glowed faint in the cold light, and when I stepped closer, I realized they were not breathing in their own rhythm. They were breathing in mine. My chest rose, their chests rose. My breath caught, so did theirs. One pig forced its jaw wider than any bone should allow. The skin around its mouth split with a wet tear. From deep inside came a sound like my own voice, strangled and warped. Thomas. Thomas, my name. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the slick floor. The others slammed against the bars, teeth scraping, shrieks rising into something between laughter and screams. The circle of pens rattled like a cage, as if something beneath was pushing upward. The ground trembled. I bolted down the hall, heart hammering, but the slaughterhouse had changed. The walls stretched longer, doors where none had ever been. The light flickering so violently, shadows seemed to crawl along the floor. My boots splashed through puddles that were too dark to be water. When I reached the prep room, I froze. My knives were gone, every blade stripped from the racks. In their place hung hooks, dozens of them, swaying gently, though no air stirred. From one hook dangled a shape. I thought it was a pig at first, but when I stepped closer, my knees buckled. It was a man. His body was split open from chest to stomach, his insides hollow, his face slacked with eyes wide and empty. But the face was familiar. It was mine. The hook creaked as the body swayed. The mouth twitched. Thomas, the sound came from its throat, though the lips barely moved. I stumbled back, knocking into the table. My hands shook so violently, I nearly fell. When I blinked, the hook was empty. Only the faint drip of blood on the floor remained. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to run. But the moment I turned, the pig screamed. Not squeals, not grunts. Screams, high and sharp, shrill enough to shatter glass. The air shook with it. I covered my ears, but it crawled inside my skull. My vision blurred, lights pulsing, and for a moment, I was back in the dream. The floor was a sea of blood, the pens filled with shapes that grinned too wide. Their skin stretched, their teeth human and broken. The sound of their screams twisted into words. Words I could not understand, but felt burning against my bones. When the vision broke, I was on my knees. My hands were slick with blood that was not mine. It coated my arms, dripping from my sleeves, seeping into my skin. The pens stood silent again, the pigs watching, still as statues. And then, I saw it. One pen was empty. The gate hung open, bars bent outward, as though something had forced its way free. The floor was marked with deep grooves, scratches that trailed. Toward the hallway, I heard hooves, slow, heavy. Behind me, I turned. What stood there was not a pig, not anymore. Its body swelled grotesquely, skin stretched tight, patches of bristle torn away to reveal raw, glistening muscle. Its face sagged, like melting wax, eyes pushed too far apart, teeth jagged and human where tusks should have been. It stepped forward, its mouth opened wide, a black pit, glistening with blood, and when it spoke, the sound was my own voice. "Help me." I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. The thing shuddered, its skin splitting down the center as something inside pressed outward, clawing at the edges. The stench was unbearable, thick and sweet like rotting meat. It took another step, and then the lights went out. Only the sound remained, wet breath, hooves dragging across the floor, my own voice whispering from the dark. Thomas. The dark was complete. My hands fumbled against the wall, fingers slick with blood I could not wipe away. I could hear the thing moving in the black, slow, deliberate steps. Wet breath rattling through a throat that was not built for breathing. Thomas, my name slid from its mouth like rot, each syllable dripping with malice. I pressed back against the wall, sliding sideways, searching for the door. The concrete was slick beneath my palms. Every few seconds, the sound of hooves scraped closer. And then, in the flicker of a dying bulb overhead, I saw it. The creature towered over me now, taller than any pig should be. Its body writhed, skin splitting and healing in the same breath, ribs jutting out like broken wings. Its mouth yawned open wider than its skull should allow, teeth spilling in crooked rows, some human, some not. The thing shuddered violently, and I realized it was laughing. I ran. My boots splashed through the unseen, blood or water, I could not tell. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, every step echoing too many times, as if I was running through a tunnel inside a throat. Behind me the creature followed, not fast, it did not need to be. The sound of its hooves filled every corner, so close I felt the vibrations in my chest. I turned sharply into the prep room and slammed the door. My chest heaved, heart hammering so violently I thought it might burst. I grabbed the nearest thing, a meat hook, and gripped it with shaking hands. The silence pressed down. Then, slowly, the sound began, a dragging, nails across metal. The door rattled as the thing scraped its teeth across the steel, groaning in hunger. Then it stopped. I held my breath. My ears rang in the silence. A faint creak behind me. The hook slipped from my hands as I spun. Hanging from the ceiling were shapes that had not been there before. Dozens of them, swinging gently in the cold air. My throat closed. They were bodies, not pigs, people. Their faces were slack, eyes hollow, mouths hanging open. Some still wore the clothes of workers I knew, coveralls, blood-stained aprons. I recognized Daniel, a man who had worked beside me for 10 years. His face was pale, lips cracked, eyes glassy and wrong as the bodies swayed. Their mouths twitched. Thomas. My knees buckled, the room spun, their voices layered, chanting my name in broken harmony. I stumbled backward, colliding with one of the swinging corpses. Its skin was cold against mine, but its head jerked suddenly, eyes snapping to mine. Its jaw opened, too wide, splitting down the neck. A gush of blood sprayed across my chest as a hand burst from its throat, clawing toward me. I screamed and shoved it away, stumbling through the swinging bodies as they writhed and laughed in unison. I crashed through the opposite door, blood burning hot across my skin. The hallway was different now. The walls pulsed faintly, slick and wet. Pipes dripped. Not water, but thick black liquid that smelled of iron. My boots sank slightly with each step, as if the floor itself was soft flesh. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like flies. Behind me the door burst open. The thing had followed. Its body dragged along the floor now, legs bending backward, arms too long, fingers scraping gouges in the walls, its head lolled sideways, teeth gnashing, eyes fixed on me. I ran faster. The hallway bent and twisted, leading me not to the exit but deeper, always deeper. Doors opened onto rooms that should not exist. One room was filled wall to wall with pigs pressed so tightly together, their skin fused. Another room was lined with mirrors, every reflection smiling back at me with teeth that were not mine. The slaughterhouse was no longer the building I knew. It had become a labyrinth, reshaped by whatever force lived inside those pens. I stumbled into the killing floor, gasping, and froze. Every pen was empty. The gates hung open, bent and twisted. The floor was soaked, ankle-deep in blood that rippled as though something moved beneath the surface. The air reeked of decay, so thick I gagged. Then the sound rose. Not squeals, not screams. Laughter low at first, then building, layer upon layer, until it roared from every corner. The walls shook with it. My head pounded, vision swimming. I clutched my ears, but it only grew louder, echoing inside my skull. And from the darkness of the pit in the center, something began to climb out. Hands first, dozens of them, slick and red, gripping the bars, pulling upward. Then faces emerged, twisted and broken, half pig, half human, eyes glowing faint white. Their jaws moved in perfect unison, teeth snapping, blood pouring from their mouths as they laughed my name, Thomas. I stumbled backward, slipping in the blood, my hook useless in my trembling hand. The things dragged themselves higher, a mass of limbs and faces, their voices overlapping in a chorus of hunger. And then the lights snapped out again. The laughter continued in the dark, closer now, and I realized I was not standing on the floor anymore. Something was breathing beneath my feet. I do not remember how I got out. One moment the floor was breathing beneath my feet, and the next I was outside in the parking lot, crouched beside my car, the cold morning air burning in my lungs. My clothes clung wet against me, heavy with blood. My hands shook so violently, I could not fit the keys into the ignition. The slaughterhouse loomed behind me, its windows dark, its walls silent, but even from here I could feel it. The building was alive, watching, waiting. I drove home in silence. The roads were empty, the sky gray and heavy. Every tree I passed seemed to lean toward me, branches crooked like fingers. My reflection in the rearview mirror twitched when I was not moving, lips curling into smiles I did not make. When I pulled into the driveway, Margaret was already at the door. She froze when she saw me. "Thomas, what happened to you?" Her voice trembled. My shirt was soaked through, crimson stains spreading across the fabric. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. The words stuck. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I could not let her touch me. Not with this stench on me, this weight. I said nothing. I walked past her into the bathroom and shut the door. The mirror stared back at me. My face was pale, eyes ringed dark, lips cracked. But something else was wrong. The reflection lagged. I raised my hand. The reflection followed a second too late. I leaned closer, heart pounding. My eyes flickered black, then back again. The reflection smiled wide, showing rows of teeth that did not belong in any human mouth. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Blood ran down my knuckles, but I felt nothing. Margaret banged on the door, her voice frantic. I told her to leave me be. She begged, but her words sounded far away, muffled like every sound inside the slaughterhouse. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the dark living room, staring out the window. The street was empty, but I could hear them. The scrape of hooves on pavement, the soft, wet breath, a laugh that was not quite human drifting through the air. At some point I must have closed my eyes, because I woke to silence. The clock on the wall read 3 in the morning. Margaret was standing in the doorway. "Thomas, you are scaring me." Her voice was low, trembling. She stepped closer, and in the dim light, her face looked strange. Her smile stretched too wide. Her eyes glistened black for a second, then flickered back. My stomach dropped. I stood, backing away. She followed, her footsteps slow, deliberate. "Thomas, come back to bed." Her voice was different. Two voices layered together, one hers, one deeper. My hands shook. I told her to stay away. She tilted her head, and for a moment I swore her skin rippled, something moving beneath it. Then she blinked, and she was normal again. Tears filled her eyes. "Thomas, please," I faltered. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe it was exhaustion twisting my vision. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But then I heard it dot from the kitchen. A squeal, long, sharp, rising into a scream. Margaret froze. She heard it too. We turned toward the sound, but the kitchen was empty. The silence pressed heavy. Then the light above the sink flickered. The shadows stretched across the floor, long and crooked, and in the reflection of the window, I saw them. Pigs. Dozens of them, packed shoulder to shoulder, eyes glowing faint white, jaws sagging open in wide grins. Their bodies pressed against the glass as if the window was all that separated us. But when I turned, the kitchen was empty. Margaret screamed. I spun back to her, and my blood froze. Her mouth was open, wider than it should be, lips splitting at the corners. Her teeth were not hers anymore. They were jagged, crooked, glistening wet in the dim light. "Thomas," it was my voice. I stumbled back against the wall as she stepped closer, her body jerking in unnatural spasms. Her eyes rolled back, leaving only black. Her jaw cracked as it opened. Wider, a sound like tearing flesh echoing through the room. "Help me." Her voice was layered, twisted, broken. Blood dripped from her mouth, splattering onto the floor. She reached for me with hands that trembled violently, fingers bent at wrong angles. I ran out the front door, into the cold night. My breath steamed in the air, my heart slamming against my ribs. Behind me, the house glowed faintly, the windows dark but alive, shapes moving inside. Margaret's scream followed me into the street, warping, twisting, until it was not hers anymore. The sound of pigs rose around me, from every yard, every shadow, every crack in the pavement. The neighborhood was alive with it. I ran into the darkness, the chorus of laughter chasing me, and when I looked back, every house on the street was smiling. I ran until my lungs felt like they would split, until my throat burned raw with the cold night air. The streetlights above me flickered one by one as I passed beneath them, casting the road into darkness behind me. I did not stop until I reached my truck, parked crooked in the driveway. My hands fumbled with the keys, slipping on the blood that still clung to my skin. The engine roared to life and I slammed the accelerator, tearing down the street without looking back. The houses blurred past me. Every window I passed reflected the same thing, rows of pigs pressed against the glass, their mouths pulled into two wide grins. Their eyes followed me, even as the houses vanished behind. The highway stretched empty ahead, a black ribbon beneath the moon. I told myself if I just kept driving, I would leave it all behind. The slaughterhouse, the whispers, Margaret's face. But the road was wrong. No matter how far I drove, the same landmarks repeated, a broken sign leaning in the weeds, an old gas station with boards over the windows, a rusted water tower looming against the horizon. Each time I passed them, I felt the circle tightening, pulling me back. The radio crackled suddenly, though I had not turned it on. At first, it was only static. Then, beneath the static, came the sound of squeals, rising and falling, layered with laughter. My own name whispered between the noise. "Thomas." I ripped the dial from the dashboard, but the sound continued, rising louder, pouring from the speakers like a scream. The windshield rattled, and in the reflection I saw something moving in the back seat. I swerved off the road, tires skidding through gravel, and slammed the brakes. My chest heaved, sweat dripping into my eyes. Slowly, I turned. The seat was empty, but the smell filled the cab. Rot, blood, something wet dripped down the upholstery, soaking into the fabric. When I reached to touch it, the stain spread, pulsing, faintly beneath my hand like a heartbeat. I stumbled out into the night, gasping. The field stretched empty around me, rows of corn standing dead and brittle in the pale light. The wind whispered through the stalks, carrying a sound I knew too well, squeals. I gripped the truck door, knuckles white. The sound grew louder, closer, until the corn rustled in rhythm, stalks bending as though something moved through them. Dozens of shapes shifting just out of sight. Then one stepped out. At first I thought it was a pig, but it stood wrong. Its body was too long, its legs bent backward, its face stretched thin like a mask. Its eyes glistened white in the moonlight. And when its mouth opened, the sound that came out was not animal. It was Margaret's voice, Thomas. My chest seized. More shapes spilled from the corn, one after another, their bodies twisting, jaws gaping. Each one carried a voice I knew. Coworkers, neighbors, friends, all layered together, calling my name. I staggered back into the truck, slamming the door, fumbling for the ignition. The engine sputtered, groaned, then caught. Headlights cut across the field, illuminating the faces of the things pressing closer. Their mouths opened wide in unison, and the sound that came out was laughter. I floored the accelerator, the truck, fishtailing onto the road. The creatures scattered, but not all. One slammed against the side of the truck, its jaw cracking against the window, leaving a smear of blood and teeth across the glass. I drove faster than I ever had in my life, tires screaming against the asphalt. The laughter followed, carried on the wind, growing louder the farther I went. My vision blurred with panic, the road twisting beneath me. Then, ahead, I saw lights. A diner, neon buzzing faint against the night, an open sign flickering in the window. I pulled into the lot so fast I nearly lost control, skidding to a halt. I staggered inside, the bell above the door chiming. The air smelled of coffee and grease, warm and familiar. For a moment, relief flooded me. There were people, a waitress behind the counter, a man sipping coffee at a booth, an old couple sharing pie. Normal faces, normal voices. I collapsed into a booth, head in my hands, shaking. The waitress approached with a smile. Long night, honey, her voice was soft, kind. She poured coffee into the cup in front of me. I muttered thanks, my throat raw. But when I looked up, my blood froze. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too dark, and dripping from her apron, soaking into the tile, was blood. The other customers turned toward me in unison, their faces split open, jaws hanging loose, eyes glowing faint in the buzzing light. The waitress leaned closer, her breath hot against my ear. "You cannot leave, Thomas." The lights flickered. The walls trembled. The smell of iron filled the air, and I realized the diner was gone. I was back in the slaughterhouse. The smell hit me first. The stench of rot and iron filled my lungs as the diner peeled away, its walls stretching like skin pulled too tight. The tiled floor buckled, splitting open into black cracks that dripped with blood. When the room finally settled, I was standing in the kill floor again. The chains above me rattled softly, swinging as though something unseen brushed against them. But the slaughterhouse was not as I remembered it. The walls pulsed faintly, wet and raw, as though the building itself was alive. Steam hissed from the drains, carrying with it whispers that slithered through the air. I pressed my hands against my ears, but the voices were inside me now. Thomas over and over, my name echoed, until it no longer sounded like mine. A low hum filled the room. At first I thought it was machinery, but the sound grew deeper, layered, with voices chanting in a language I could not understand. The words clawed at my mind, each syllable sharp and jagged. The chains above clattered. Slowly, they lowered, their hooks swinging just above my head. The metal dripped with something thick and black. I stepped back, heart pounding, but the chains followed, swaying in rhythm with the chant. Then, the floor shifted. The concrete split wide, revealing a staircase spiraling down into the dark. The chanting grew louder, pulling me toward it. My body moved without my will, legs trembling as I descended into the depths below the slaughterhouse. The air grew hotter the farther I went. The walls closed in, slick with blood. The light above faded until only the faint red glow below guided my steps. My breath echoed too loud, each inhale a struggle. When I reached the bottom, the space opened into a cavern. The walls were carved with symbols I did not recognize, jagged shapes gouged deep into the stone. The floor was slick with blood, pooling in grooves that formed a circle around the center of the room. And in that circle hung bodies, dozens of pigs, suspended by hooks through their spines. Their heads sagged low, their skin pale and tight, but their eyes were open, and they were all staring at me. Their mouths twitched, and in unison, they began to speak. Thomas's sound was layered, broken, voices of men and women tangled within the squeals. My knees buckled. I wanted to run, but the circle pulsed faintly with light, trapping me inside. The pigs shifted, their flesh splitting, revealing faces beneath. Human faces, stretched and fused into the skin. Eyes rolled, lips moved, whispers spilling out. Some I recognized. My coworkers, my neighbors, Margaret. Margaret's voice was the loudest. Help me staggered forward, tears burning my eyes. But the ground shook, and from the center of the circle something began to rise. At first it looked like a mass of flesh, writhing and dripping with blood. But then it took form. A creature taller than any man, its body stitched from both pig and human parts, limbs bending at unnatural angles. Its head was a skull, half human, half boar, tusks jutting from its mouth. Eyes glowed white in the sockets, piercing straight through me. It stepped closer, each movement wet and heavy. The circle of bodies swayed in rhythm, their mouths stretching into wide grins. The chant grew louder, shaking the walls of the cavern. The creature raised its hand. My body locked in place. I could not move, could not breathe. My chest tightened, as though invisible hooks had pierced through me. Thomas's voice boomed, not from its mouth, but from everywhere. From the walls, from the bodies, from inside my skull. You are chosen. The hooks above me rattled, lowering closer. Chains wrapped around my wrists, pulling me to my knees. The circle of blood beneath me began to spread, seeping into my skin, burning hot as fire. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the chant. Visions burst behind my eyes. I saw the slaughterhouse. Decades ago, men in masks carving the same symbols into the walls. I saw bodies lowered into the drains, their blood feeding the earth below. I saw the creature rising again and again, each time taking another to join its flock. And I saw myself, my body strung up, eyes empty, mouth stretched into a grin. The chains pulled tighter, cutting into my flesh. The creature leaned close, its breath hot and foul. You cannot leave. You are ours now. My vision blurred as the hooks pierced my skin. Pain tore through me, white-hot, unbearable. The cavern spun, the faces melted, the chant rose higher and higher, and then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing alone on the kiln floor. The machines hummed faintly. The walls were silent. The chains above hung still. It was morning. The world looked normal again, but I could still feel the hooks in my flesh. And when I looked at the steel walls, I saw my reflection smiling back. At first, I thought it had been a dream. I stood on the kilt floor in the thin morning light. The machines, silent, the chains unmoving. The smell of disinfectant lingered, masking the scent of blood. Everything was exactly as it should have been. but the ache in my wrists told me otherwise. The skin was torn raw, the faint outlines of chain links burned into the flesh. No matter how hard I scrubbed, the marks would not fade. I told myself to leave, to get in the truck, drive until the slaughterhouse was only a memory. But when I reached the door, my body froze. Something deep inside me whispered that I belonged here now, that leaving was no longer possible. I returned home, but the house did not feel like mine anymore. The walls seemed to breathe in the silence, and every reflective surface showed me smiling when I knew I was not. I avoided mirrors, avoided water, avoided windows at night, but the changes came anyway. The first was the sound. At night, as I lay in bed, I could hear squeals faintly in my ears. Not from outside, but from inside my skull. They twisted into whispers, murmuring words I could not fully catch. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried. Always, they called my name. The second was the hunger. Meat no longer satisfied me. The taste of pork, once familiar, turned rancid on my tongue. I craved something richer, heavier, hot with iron. I caught myself staring at my own hand, wondering how it would taste. The third was the face. I saw it for the first time in the bathroom mirror. My eyes looked different, smaller, more beady. My nose had widened, my teeth had sharpened. For a moment I thought it was a trick of the light, but when I leaned closer, the reflection leaned back wrong. It grinned, even though my mouth was still. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Blood streamed down my knuckles. The reflection grinned wider through the shards. By the third night, sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back, in the cavern. The chanting filled my ears, and the hooks lowered from above, dragging at my flesh. I woke each morning drenched in sweat, my sheets soaked through with blood, and I was not alone. I began to hear footsteps in the house, slow, heavy, hooves against the floorboards. Doors creaked open by themselves. Shadows shifted in the corners, and when I turned, I swore I saw shapes short, broad, with snouts that dripped red. I tried to leave. I made it as far as the front porch. The air was still, the street quiet, but when I stepped into the yard, the ground pulsed beneath my feet, warm and wet, as though the earth itself was alive. The sound of squeals rose from below, vibrating through the soil. I staggered back inside, slammed the door, and pressed my back to it, shaking. That was when I noticed the walls. At first, they looked the same as always, but when I leaned closer, I saw faint lines carved into the paint, the same jagged symbols I had seen beneath the slaughterhouse. They spread across every room, subtle but endless. Glowing faintly red in the dark, I tore at them with my nails until my fingers bled, but the marks only spread deeper, widening like wounds. By the end of the week, I no longer recognized myself. My voice had changed, deeper, layered with a low grunt. My hands had thickened, nails blackened, skin rough and bristled. When I ate, I did not chew. I tore, I ripped, I swallowed. I stayed in the dark, but the dark did not hide me. The whispers grew louder, the voices more insistent. Join us one night. I awoke to find my bed surrounded. Shapes stood in the shadows, their outlines bent and wrong, their faces stretched into grins. Their eyes glowed faint, white like lanterns, and I realized they were not strangers. They were my neighbors, my coworkers, my friends. Their bodies twisted, their jaws elongated, their skin pale and stretched tight. They were becoming what I was. Becoming. Margaret stood among them. Her face was torn, her eyes empty, but her voice was clear. Thomas, it is time. The walls split wide. Blood poured down like rain. The floor cracked beneath me, revealing the staircase once more, spiraling into the red glow below. My body moved on its own, trembling, dripping sweat. The voices rose louder, deafening, unstoppable. Join UC stumbled to the staircase. The smell of iron and rot filled my lungs. My reflection followed me in every surface, grinning wider than my own face, and for the first time, I felt it. I wanted to go down. I wanted to belong. The night it began, the air carried a smell I had known all my life. Blood and smoke, the iron stench that seeps into every crack of the slaughterhouse. But this time, it did not stay inside the walls. It poured through the streets of Madison, heavy and suffocating. I could not sleep. The whispers were constant, louder now, layered with squeals and cries. When I pressed my hands against my ears, I heard them clearer, as though my own flesh carried their voices. I staggered to the window, hoping for silence. The town was awake. Lights flickered in houses up and down the street. Figures moved in the yards, hunched and jerking. Their shadows stretched too long across the pavement, bending at wrong angles. I saw neighbors I had known for years standing in their driveways, their mouths opening and closing as though chewing invisible meat. Their eyes glowed faint in the dark. I stepped back from the window, heart hammering. My reflection stayed against the glass. It did not move with me. It grinned wide, tusks glinting in its mouth. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, it was gone. The sound of hooves echoed down the street. I opened the front door, against every instinct, and the world outside was different. The sky glowed red, clouds churning like smoke above a fire. The asphalt pulsed faintly beneath my feet, as though it were flesh stretched thin. Houses sagged inward, their walls bulging like ribs beneath skin, and the people my people were no longer human. They shuffled into the street in silence, their bodies breaking and reforming with each step. Bones cracked, jaws split, eyes sank into sockets too deep. Some fell to all fours, snouts pushing through their faces. Others grew long tusks that tore through their cheeks. Their grins widened as they turned toward the slaughterhouse, drawn like moths to flame. Margaret was among them, her neck twisted, her voice rasping as she chewed at the air. She turned to me, eyes white and empty, and whispered only one word, "Come." The ground shuddered. A deep rumble shook the town, rising from beneath. Cracks split the pavement, glowing red as blood surged upward. The earth bled openly now. From the slaughterhouse, the chains began to sing. I could hear them clatter, in rhythm, rattling in the night air, louder than thunder. The red glow spread across the sky, centered on that building, that place where I had spent 30 years, spilling blood. I should have run. Every piece of me screamed to flee, to hide, to deny what was happening. But my legs carried me forward, down the street, following the crowd. The pull was irresistible, a hook already in my flesh. As we drew closer, I saw that the slaughterhouse was no longer a building. Its walls had peeled open, wet and glistening. Ribs jutted upward from its foundation, curving into the sky. Chains swung from flesh instead of steel. The air hummed with the chant. Thousands of voices joined together, filling every corner of the town. We entered through the gates. Inside, the kill floor stretched wider than it ever had before, endless, a cavern of bone and blood. The air shimmered, hot and wet, thick enough to choke. Above us hung bodies, both pig and human, swaying gently on their hooks. Some still moved, twitching faintly. Their mouths whispered words I could not bear to hear. The crowd surged forward, collapsing to their knees. Their flesh split open, bones twisting as they bent to the floor. Their voices rose in unison, chanting that same language, the one that burned my ears, in the center of it all. The creature waited. It was larger now, grown taller, its body stitched, tighter with flesh from both beast and man. Its tusks gleamed, dripping black. Its eyes glowed white, piercing through every one of us. It raised its arms, and the hooks lowered from the ceiling. I tried to scream, my voice caught in my throat. The hooks swung over me, over Margaret, over every kneeling body. The chant grew louder, the floor trembling beneath us, and then the hooks fell. They pierced flesh, sinking into shoulders and backs, pulling bodies upward. Screams filled the air, but they were swallowed by the chant. Blood rained down, hot against my skin. I staggered, tried to move, but chains wrapped around my wrists, dragging me forward. My knees slammed against the concrete, the circle of blood spreading beneath me once more. The creature leaned close, its breath foul, its voice inside me. This is the harvest. I looked around, as more and more of Madison was strung up, their bodies swaying, their mouths frozen in wide, broken grins. Their eyes glowed brighter, turning the slaughterhouse into a cathedral of light. And as I felt the hook tear through my flesh, I realized the truth. This was not the end. This was the beginning. The hook tore into me with a sound like fabric ripping. My body rose from the floor, pulled by a strength beyond machines. Blood ran down my arms, dripping to the concrete below, joining the crimson pool that spread wider and wider. The chant filled me now. It was no longer around me but inside, in my bones, in the rhythm of my heart. I tried to fight it, but every pulse carried the words deeper, etched into me. My mouth opened against my will. My throat gave voice to sounds I did not understand. The creature loomed in the center of the kill floor, arms spread, tusks gleaming, its stitched flesh glistening with blood. It stared at me, and I understood that this had never been about pigs, or slaughter, or sacrifice. It had always been about us, about me. The walls of the slaughterhouse pulsed, alive, wet with breath. Chains swung above, dripping. The bodies of my neighbors twitched, glowing with that same white fire in their eyes. They grinned, even as the hooks dug deeper. They were no longer themselves. They were vessels, and I was next. The hook lifted me higher, until I was level with the creature. Its eyes met mine. Its voice thundered, not in my ears, but in my skull. You have killed for 30 years. You have spilled blood freely. You have carved open flesh without mercy. You have already belonged to me. I shook my head, tears streaking through the sweat and blood on my face. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that I had only done a job, that I had no choice, that I had only followed the rhythm of the knife. But the truth was there, undeniable. I had never looked at their eyes when I swung the hammer, when I pressed the blade. I had never stopped to wonder what it meant to drain the life from a creature that watched me die. I had pretended they were nothing. Now I was nothing. The creature reached forward, its hand huge and heavy, pressing against my chest. My skin split beneath its touch, ribs cracking open. Heat poured into me, burning, searing every nerve. My screams joined the chant, merging into one voice. I felt my body change, my bones stretched, my spine bent, my face pushed forward, teeth lengthening into tusks. My skin thickened, bristled. The hunger in me rose until it drowned everything else. And then I saw beyond the slaughterhouse, beyond Madison, beyond the town itself. I saw countless other places, countless other kill floors, stretching across the world. I saw workers with knives and hammers, their hands red, their eyes blind. I saw pigs staring back, patient, waiting, and I understood. This was not one ritual. This was not one curse. This was the harvest, eternal and unending. Every slaughterhouse was a temple, every blade a prayer, every drop of blood a promise, and I was the priest. The creature grinned, tusks dripping, and I grinned back. The hook tore deeper, but the pain was gone. Only the hunger remained. The chant rose to a roar, shaking the walls, shaking the earth itself. Chains rattled, bodies swung, blood rained in sheets. The white light filled the slaughterhouse, filled the town, filled the world. When it faded, I stood on the kill floor once more, the machines silent, the chains unmoving, the smell of disinfectant. In the air, Madison was quiet outside. The sun rose soft over the rooftops. Nothing stirred. I walked the length of the room, boots echoing against concrete. I touched the chains, slick and cold. I touched the hooks, sharp and clean. And when I turned, I saw the pigs waiting in the pens. They were silent, perfectly still. Their eyes locked on me, unblinking, endless. I felt the tusks in my mouth when I smiled back, and I knew the work was only beginning.